I appreciate everybody coming to this press conference we called. A little bit about why we're here today. And anytime we can get the three biggest, most active agencies together to do something, you know there's going to be an impact. We're here to talk about auto theft. I'm not going to spend my time up here talking about the statistics. You know the problem. You live it, you report on it, the public understands it. The question is, what are we doing about it? I can speak from the state police perspective. You know, we've been on the sidelines on this, and we've made an effort to realign our personnel to join forces with APD and BCSO. Predominantly, state police is concentrated in the rural areas of New Mexico. We normally stay out of the metro area. There's a lot of police officers here, but we know we have a problem and an issue. And we see our brother and sister officers with APD and BCSO working as hard as they can, and now we're going to join forces. We're calling it an auto theft suppression effort. What that means is I've picked a lieutenant, a sergeant, and 4 agents or detectives, and designated them to be our auto theft unit. They've been in existence for 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, we've had 7 stolen cars recovered. That's just a 2-week period. And just today, I believe we were in a pursuit and pitted a car or spiked a car and picked up another one. But you know, we're going to do something a little different this time. And other entities will talk about this effort. But what we're going to do different is work together. The criminals are working together. We know they're stealing cars to do other crimes. We know that they network to be more successful at what they do. It's about time we did. And we've collaborated on many other things as far as agencies go. However, this is going to be an endeavor we partake in, that we're not going to operate stovepipe. What I mean by that is we are going to, as the state police is concerned, we're going to work with BCSO and APD with their detective units, their auto theft units, out in the field. They're going to work together, whether it's bait car operations or checking the license plates of vehicles that may be stolen in an area. Maybe it's a surge of one of the commands in Albuquerque or in the county's area down in the valley. But it's going to be an effort by all 3 agencies, and we're not going to let up. The message I've given to my troops that work for the state police is don't get overly concerned with the fact that many times we arrest individuals that are stealing cars and they're out the next day or the day after. That's a fight for us to fight on a different level. We are going to continue to press this element until it leaves this city and this state. And if we can't control it in Albuquerque, I lose control in rural New Mexico, and I'm not willing to do that. So I'm going to throw in as much as I can to APD and BCSO to make this quite frankly, make this possible, make it productive, and make a difference. We can't continue at this rate, whether it's the insurance rates going up in this state or whether it's the fact that there's violent crime associated and narcotics associated with these auto thefts. So that's my opening. That's what the state police are doing, and the other agencies will talk about their position. I know the mayor has worked tirelessly and very hard to really refocus APD along with the chief, and so he's up next to talk about the city's efforts. Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. This is, I think, in many ways a sight for sore eyes for folks who live in Albuquerque. To see these 3 departments working together on a primary issue facing our city is something that has been long overdue, but now we're going to work on it. And so this is, I think, a bright point, the beginning point of how we actually directly address this issue plaguing our city and our state. Now, all I want to do is articulate a couple of things. For folks who are not as involved in law enforcement, what we've learned over time is, and I think relearned, is that auto theft is at the core of all sorts of other crimes. So the cost of auto theft is actually related directly because of the fact that the vehicle is used for the robbery, for the burglary, for the shooting, for the addiction, drug-related crime. All of this comes back to auto theft. In a way, auto theft is sort of the tool for all the crimes that are afflicting our city right now. And we've had a historical approach, I think, where folks were aware of this, but the idea historically at APD was that we're going to essentially focus on, one, processing the claims so people can get their insurance, finding the car so they can get their car back, or it was on things like dusting for prints, but not necessarily having TAC plans designed to catch the folks who were stealing the cars. And this is a fundamental shift that we're doing at APD with our partners. And the shift is this. We are now going to focus on auto theft again. We are going to run plates. We're going to have TAC plans designed to catch these folks, because we also know that the biggest perpetrators of auto theft happen to also be wanted for a whole host of other factors. So auto theft is at the nexus of all sorts of crime in our city. And so instead of treating it like a property crime, we're going to treat it as the connection point to major crimes happening all around the city. That's a philosophical change that we're in the process of instilling at APD. Now, I want to emphasize, we had NYPD visit us, maybe it was now almost 2 months ago. This is one of the things that they already went through and that we learned from them. They told us straight up that you've got to focus more on auto theft, not because the stats are so high, because it's the gateway into dealing with all sorts of other issues. And so I'm proud now that we're joined by the other departments in our community to be able to do that, because that's what it's going to take. As the chief mentioned, from a criminal's perspective also, they don't care whether they're in city limits or county limits or state limits. And so we shouldn't either. And going forward, we're going to do that. And so I want to thank the state police and Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department for partnering with us on this issue. And I also know that we need more resources. Luckily, we're putting a plan together to do that. We've had this discussion for a couple of weeks in our city and in city council. But I want to highlight one thing. There is now an 18-month backlog, roughly, to process fingerprints. You cannot do what we need to do for auto theft with that backlog. And that's why when we talk about getting resources for public safety, you're going to see it in areas that aren't necessarily a badge and a gun. They might actually be right here at the crime lab processing those fingerprints, because that is the only way we're actually going to catch and bring to justice, or at least send to the justice system, the folks who are perpetrating these crimes. And so that's why we're committed to addressing this from all sides. And so with that, to speak to some of these details, I want to introduce, of course, our Chief of Police, Mike Geier.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly, for your leadership and support. And thank you, Chief Kassetas and Sheriff Gonzales, for this partnership. Since our first auto theft sting earlier this year, we've continued this aggressive push and a comprehensive effort to cut down on auto theft throughout the city. In January and February, we recovered 843 vehicles and made 137 arrests. That's 2 months' work. We're continuing to use a combination of resources, ranging from APD auto theft to our field patrol officers, from multiple area commands, tactical units, and our air resources to track stolen cars and arrest these offenders. We've heard from the officers who appreciate the opportunity to again participate in these operations. This is true police work and is producing satisfying and rewarding results. Our officers also value the opportunity to work with our community partners and show results from these auto theft stings. Our priority, of course, is to reduce crime, but we have to build those stronger bonds with our communities to restore that trust that was once lost in the past. In addition to education and enforcement, we're also working with the District Attorney's Office to build stronger cases for prosecution. Ideally, we will have fully staffed department with plenty of officers to help prevent these crimes as we move forward, and we're going to aggressively investigate thieves who think they can get away with auto theft. Thanks to Mayor Keller, we have a plan in place to hire more officers and to get more resources for them. We're going to put APD back in the best position to fight crime and help bring back effective community policing. In the meantime, we're grateful to the State Police and Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office for stepping up and creating these partnerships in which we all can work together. This is definitely a force multiplier that puts law enforcement in a much better position. With extra officers and effective coordination, we minimize the risk to civilians by reducing the chances that an officer will find himself in a situation that will require a high level of force. This is a key component of community policing that we are emphasizing through all these operations. As we continue to cut down on these auto thefts and other crime and put these repeat offenders in jail, I'm confident that we're going to make an impact on crime in this city. We're also going to send a very strong message to car thieves. All of us are out there, and we're not backing down. Thanks.
Good afternoon. We understand that collaboration has been the key to our success over the last 3 years. During these operations, we are going to be bringing to the table our auto theft unit, our fugitive apprehension surveillance team, and the air unit. We also have, in addition to that, our marked units that are equipped with the Star Chase system. We understand that this helps mitigate pursuits and minimizes the danger to the public. I would seriously ask the other leaders of law enforcement to consider this type of technology, and that I believe it's the safest way to keep people driving out there in our community out of harm's reach. We will work in conjunction with the New Mexico State Police and Albuquerque Police Department on these TAC plans on a weekly and monthly basis. And we also understand that we'll be targeting high target areas that are infested with this with these auto theft issues. And we made it very clear, and I think they also made it very clear, if you're caught in a stolen vehicle, you will go to jail. So in addition to the auto theft task force initiative, I'd also like to make mention to and give credit to our auto theft unit, and the fact that they recovered 391 stolen vehicles and made 439 arrests in the last several months that they've been placed together. And I think it's also nice to be noted is that the department has recovered 929 vehicles in the last several months. So I give the credit to our deputies, I give the credit to our staff, and I am looking forward to this initiative. I appreciate it. Chief.
So I'll close us out by making sure that everybody understands that first and foremost, what's most important to us is safety. And the mayor hit on it. He alluded to TAC plans. We are not going to be running around the city unorganized. We're 3 agencies, the 3 largest in this state. We're going to do this methodically through planning, through technology, through intelligence-driven good police work. There's not going to be many places the bad guys can hide. We don't want to put lives at risk. And we saw what happened last week. Some of you followed the story where one of the state police auto theft unit went out, and one of their tasks is to identify people that have active warrants for auto theft and go arrest them. Because guess what they're doing? They're stealing more vehicles. These should be in jail. A judge issued a warrant. That individual didn't want to come out of his house, and there was a confrontation and a shot was fired. Right? We know it's a dangerous game, but it's a serious game. We're going to be as safe as we can. We don't want the media or the public guessing about how successful we are. The 3 agencies have talked, and after every planned event, there'll be a press release released under the flag of the Auto Theft Suppression Unit. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to look or be worded. The PIOs are going to come up with that. That way, after we have a planned event, you will know the results. We think that it should be transparent. You should see how successful we are or we're not, and track those cases and those individuals through the system. That's something that each agency is going to do. The lead agency will be responsible for it, would include all 3 agencies' activity broken down so you can understand what we did, where we did it, and how it turned out. We think that's important. I think that's all we have. We can stand for questions.
The agencies weren't cooperating before. Why is this a departure?
Let me start out by answering that. It wasn't a fact that we weren't cooperating. We cooperate all the time on different levels. However, law enforcement sometimes gets compartmentalized, right? About jurisdictional issues. The state police has full jurisdiction throughout the state, except for most tribal areas or Indian country, and some we do. But at the end of the day, the city has their jurisdictional city limits, and the county, of course, operates in Bernalillo County. So usually we work together, but we organize together. But on this effort, I think it's really uniquely different because we've got our units working together on a weekly basis, if not daily. We still have our manpower supervised by our respective agencies, but what they're doing is they're collaborating. They're sharing intelligence. The Albuquerque Police Department has an unbelievable resource. It's the Real-Time Crime Center. They're always collecting data, and now they've been really good in the last few years, I believe, with sharing it, and it's only been amplified. That's why I think this is going to be a success, and it's a little bit different than working together on a monthly or once in a while kind of effort. APD, BCSO are sharing with us who their bad guys are, where they're at, where they're operating, and their areas that they need impact on. And instead of us driving around aimlessly as the state police, which we haven't been doing before, but we would if we weren't partnering, we're able to take those limited resources that I have, right, join it with BCSO and APDs. I call that a force multiplier. Sorry, anybody else?
I would just add that, you know, the frontline officers, I think, have always worked together. And so that's always been the case. I think historically there have been even some divisions just kind of, you know, on the 5th floor and things like that. I know when I came in and every individual that I worked with, I remember on Chief Geier's first day, we walked over and said hi to the sheriff and said, we're going to work together going forward. So I think some of those things are helping amplify what the chief spoke about, because there's cover from the top. We are committed to working together from day one.
Is this something we're expecting to happen long term? Is it more of a task force that's, you know, periodic, or what are we looking at?
I think as we gain success, I think it's something we could continue to do. I think one thing we failed to mention is that we do work on a regular basis. When it comes to emergency response teams, SWAT teams, they're working on a regular basis. I think this is from the investigative standpoint, so I think this might be a different approach to obviously a big problem we have here. I think that everybody's all in, and I think we're all excited about it.
And Chief Kassetas alluded to this, is we've had partnerships, but they've been sporadic, and we need succession planning. Auto theft kind of creeped up on us over a few years. Had we addressed it in the earlier stages, we might not be where we are today. So we'll continue this as long as we can, maybe not the extreme effort as crime dies down, as we're intending to, but definitely these partnerships. And not just in the area of auto theft, it's any other area that pops up during this incident.
And I'll just add, we're in it for the long run. We're in it to make a difference, and how long that takes, we're committed. You know, we're up there number one. If we overnight drop to, you know, a level that we can live with, which would be, you know, the best in the country, then of course we'll divert our efforts elsewhere. Reality is crime doesn't stop, right? We've seen some of the issues pop up in the county and the city just in the last week. It's a very busy area, so that's why we're joining forces, make a bigger impact. So I think you'll see we're in it for the long run until we see significant decrease. And you saw the numbers that the county and the city have posted up on recovered vehicles. Lieutenant Brian Burr's in the back, no pressure, Lieutenant. I know we're only in it for 2 weeks, but I know we're going to be able to match that and again help each other out. That's what's important. Anything else?
What is the status of auto burglary in Albuquerque? You brought up some great numbers of results, but where are we now? Is it still
Last year we ended with about 7,700 approximately, and that was a slight decrease from the previous year. But I think it was Deputy Chief Medina can verify this. Around 2010, they were about 4,000 less than 4,000. So you can see in a short period of time, we've got to a level where it's unacceptable.
I mean, we know, I think we got to be really honest with the facts in that it's almost doubled in the last 8 to 5 years, in that range. And we know, depending on the stats, we're one of the worst in the country per capita. And that's why I really appreciate everyone's commitment to actually address this head on.
Will you be using new techniques, or is this just more people is more results?
I think a combination of both. We brought, obviously, as Chief Kassetas has mentioned, the intelligence-led aspect, more focused on the defender basis. We identify defenders, we can follow them around and get warrants for them and pick them up. But we also have technology, as the sheriff mentioned, the Star Chase system. We have bait cars that have GPS tracking. We have other techniques that are basically undercover type operations that will draw people to our areas, and we'll focus on place-based policing too. So it's a combination of many different strategies. There's no one-size-fits-all here. Whatever works, and all of it at the same time if we need to.
I think another component of it is boots on the ground, and the mayor had talked about it being supported from the top down. I've experienced that with Governor Martinez. I've never been held back when I wanted to create new initiatives, and this is one she very much wanted and supported through the legislative process even. So, part of it is, the other part is the chief had said about the technology and working together and sharing information is one part. I think that you put more people on a problem, you solve that problem. And again, we look at the stressors that these three chiefs up here face every day. It's not that we can concentrate on just one component of crime. It's all out there, right? So if we throw all of our efforts at auto theft, guess what? We're going to see a rise somewhere else. It's displaced. Our job is to figure out how to really address it on all levels and equalize it. And I think that's what we're doing.
I think one other thing I'd like to mention is that this is a suppression unit, but I think the other thing we need to look at is broadening this out to the field services of all agencies, because if we can't have star chase systems on all the vehicles, then everybody becomes involved in auto theft. So it's not limited just to the auto theft task force. You brought in that net and you're able to capture more. So I think that strategy would probably be most effective, but it's being able to come up with that funding and supporting it. And I continue to ask for that funding, and it's just a matter of time, hopefully, before we get that.
Yeah, and this is something that APD is implementing, the Star Chase system. We're looking at it as well. And what the sheriff said, trying to get my chiefs and sheriffs straight. What the sheriff said is, I think, particularly important. There is a vision, and we're going to look at this in our budget of what does this mean to have that system as part of field policing. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that you have to address, obviously, crime from all sides, but the most recent theories and successes in other cities are based on the fact that auto theft is actually the connection to other crimes. So it's actually very counterintuitive. Historically, we used to say we are only going to focus, or we're going to mostly focus on violent crime because everyone understands that that inflicts the most damage on our society. But that focus pulled us away from auto theft. And the irony is that if you actually address auto theft, you are addressing violent crime and all sorts of other crimes at the same time. So we believe this actually is a higher return on investment in terms of priorities that will affect all these other areas of crime. That's why it's so important that we're doing this now.
What about ways that law enforcement can make sure that cases don't get dismissed once people are behind bars, to make sure that those cases actually get prosecuted?
Right now, we're working very closely with the district attorney's office. They've identified the top offenders in terms of they have repeat cases and they have cases waiting for prosecution. But we have started, we've hired 4 or more right now, paralegals to help the officers present the cases, get them in a timely manner, in an efficient and effective package that the DA can take and go to trial with without having to piecemeal pieces of evidence or witness statements and things like that. And I think that's probably the most effective ways that we'll get convictions. And again, I think Chief Kassetas just said, by putting these people in jail, even if they get out, eventually they're going to have those warrants, and then they'll have no violations, and then we'll keep them off. For every day they're out, there's less crime being committed.
What about keeping the public safe? I mean, we've seen that in the past, that people have died because of, a stolen car, trying to catch up to a stolen car.
Well, that's why we're using the air support during some of these, and the Star Chase system is basically a GPS tracker device that we can sit back and follow that vehicle for miles away and find out where it ends up, and that the air support can come in and direct us to where they identify the people. They actually have video footage, and we'll be able to do that because, again, yeah, it's not just us driving safely, but the offender, the reckless actions they take when they're stopped or attempted to be stopped by the police can result in those tragedies.
You guys talked about working with NYPD and the efforts that they made, and Mayor Keller talked about how hopefully people will see a decrease in all sorts of other types of property crime as a result of this task force. Is that kind of the main goal in terms of we'll see decrease in crime overall because of all the efforts put into auto theft?
Yeah, obviously we have a lot of Part 1 crimes, and property crimes have always been a big problem. And even when people are just doing property crimes, say a shoplifting, which seems like a relatively minor crime, we've seen knife pulled and we've seen security guards and employees hurt or even shot in some of these cases. So we know that it starts somewhere, and a lot of these criminals, they're a jack of all trades. They're a drug dealer one day, they're stealing identities the next, they're shoplifting, doing house burglaries, auto burglaries, stealing cars. And so yes, I think it's probably only a small percentage of the criminals that are doing all these crimes, so we put them away. I definitely think that we can predict a reduction.
Yeah, they're not stealing these cars to take the family to Disneyland. We know that, right? They're stealing them to, as the mayor said, further other criminal elements, pulled armed robbery, burglarizing homes. Many times our detectives or agents will pull over vehicles or arrest individuals that are in a stolen car and find that stolen property or that nexus to narcotics or that white-collar crime nexus. So we think it's going to definitely be fruitful, and again, our goal is to continue to push out. We do find that, my goal is to keep these resources from the state police perspective in Bernalillo County, which usually my guys, when you find a chop shop or something, say in Valencia County, they'll go do that. What I'm going to have them do is, if we find something outside of Bernalillo County, I have a contingent of detectives spread out throughout the state. This unit will hand off that to them so they can concentrate in other counties, and we keep that resource intact and committed to the mission here. And that's a bit of a different approach we've taken in the past too.
And I could add to that, you did say, you mentioned New York PD and their strategies. Obviously, a big city, big crime problem. They have focused on areas like turnstile jumpers in the subways, and what they're finding is they identify those people are people that are wanted on more serious crimes, and they're able to take them off the street. And their crime is reduced to the lowest level they've had since the 50s. So sometimes you have to start with lower level, and not that auto thefts are lower level crime, but as they pointed out, we're a very mobile city as opposed to New York, where there's more foot traffic. Is we have to focus on what is unique to this metro area.
You've mentioned some stats about recovering cars and also catching suspects. What are those both equal goals of this, or is one kind of more important? Like, are you more focused on catching the suspects, or more focused on?
Well, and the mayor kind of hit this a little bit. It's obviously the people like to get their cars back, insurance companies. There's a cost outside of the criminal aspect. Catching suspects would prevent those in the first place. So obviously, they're kind of competing priorities, but I mean, getting the bad guys off the street is probably our first priority.
And I think that balance is what we're trying to get back into equilibrium. The focus, at least from APD historically, was much more about car recovery and the insurance claim and so forth. And we're going to keep doing that, of course, but we want to try and prevent those from happening, and that's certainly a new angle to APD's most recent strategies.
The numbers that you guys shared, I mean, I know I was shocked when I heard 843, for example. Is it fair to say that's a higher number because you guys have been putting so much effort into finding those cars the last 2 months?
Absolutely. I think those cars are out there. They're abandoned. Sometimes these criminals actually place them in strategic locations so that they run from one stolen car, they have another one hidden in the neighborhood so that the police go after them. I think we found more because we had the area commands involved, so it's more of a local look at it. In one area command, they recovered 32 stolen autos just in that one area command. So you can see that we're making that effort, so we're going to find more, yes.
Any other questions? All right, I think what we'll do is wrap it up, and of course everyone will stick around after. And I just want to say thank you to all our law enforcement folks every day for doing everything they can to keep us safe, and also to these 3 leaders for stepping up and working together on this initiative and to help make our city safer and our state safer. Thank you.
Thank you.